Bonaparte was now a man to be reckoned with. He was driving through Paris in a fine carriage, wearing new clothes, drenching himself in eau de cologne. The unsophisticated general was no ladies' man, but he had fallen in love. Her name was Marie Joseph Rose de Beauharnais. Everyone called her Rose. Bonaparte called her Josephine. She was a Creole aristocrat from the French colony of Martinique, a 32-year-old widow with 2 small children, deep in debt, trying to make her way in Paris alone. Languid, with a nonchalant shading into indolence, she was known as a woman of refinement, charm, and grace. It was said that she even went to bed gracefully. Bonaparte was dazzled by her. "I was naturally timid among women," he said. Madame de Beauharnais was the first woman who gave me any degree of confidence.
Josephine was what might be called a slightly forced woman. She'd been married young, her husband had died in the guillotine. She'd had an affair with somebody that helped her out, and it was well known she had affairs with men in high French society.
No one stood higher than Paul Barras, the most powerful figure in the new government. Josephine was his mistress, a woman of influence in the most fashionable salons in Paris.
Bonaparte saw her in a world of power. She was at the center of society. She had all these connections. She was very much someone who could be useful to him. And then I think he just fell madly in love with her.
Josephine lived in a little cottage set in a pleasant garden. Some said it was Barras who paid the rent. But Barras was growing tired of her. Now Bonaparte visited her there. Josephine seemed amused by her new lover. Although she knew how to please him, she did not return his passion. When Bonaparte proposed marriage, she hesitated.
She wasn't attracted to him at all. In fact, she told a friend later that for a long time, she had to overcome a feeling of repugnance. He was so serious and he had no sense of humor. He was skinny. His hair was kind of hanging and he was unkempt.
But
she knows her beauty is vanishing. Already her teeth are bad, she's getting wrinkles. Napoleon doesn't see it, but others see it, and she sees it.
Her looks fading and her debts mounting, she needed a protector. On March 9, 1796, Napoleon Bonaparte and Josephine de Beauharnais were married. A gold enameled medallion was the general's wedding gift to his bride. On it were inscribed the words, "To Destiny." While Bonaparte led his soldiers into battle, he never stopped thinking of Josephine, writing her letter after letter, day after day. "Not a day goes by without my loving you," he wrote her. "Not a night without holding you in my arms. I curse the glory and ambition which keeps me from the soul of my life. Whenever I am troubled as to how things will turn out, I put my hand to my heart where throbs your likeness. I have but to look at it, and my love is perfect happiness." Josephine would sometimes read his letters aloud to friends. Bonaparte, she told them, is so amusing. "I shall be frantic if I do not have a letter from you tonight," Bonaparte wrote Josephine. Bonaparte desperately wanted his wife to join him in Italy, but Josephine refused to leave Paris. She was spending her time with a dapper young army lieutenant.
Elle trompe Napoléon
She's cheating on Napoleon with a young officer, infinitely more seductive than Napoleon. She's not in love with Napoleon. She's afraid she'll be bored in Italy, because in Paris it's a life of parties, a life of luxury.
Finally, after weeks of Bonaparte's pleading letters, Josephine left Paris for Italy. She wept, wrote one witness, as though she were going to a torture chamber. She arrived at Milan's Serbelloni Palace to find that her husband had filled it with flowers in her honor. There they spent the third night of their married life together. After 48 hours, Bonaparte went back to doing what he did best, making war. While Bonaparte was marooned in Egypt, his wife was buying a new home. A manor house 6 miles from Paris called Malmaison. There, Josephine enjoyed over 300 acres of gardens, woods, and fields, and the companionship of her lover. When an aide dared to tell Bonaparte the truth, the general was crushed. "The veil is torn," he wrote his brother. "I am tired of grandeur. All my feelings have dried up. I no longer care about my glory. At 29, I have exhausted everything." Furious, he took the wife of one of his officers for a mistress. His friends called her the general's Cleopatra. By October 16th, Bonaparte was in Paris. First, he would settle with Josephine. With his steady rise to fame and power, the dynamic between the inexperienced soldier and the sophisticated society woman had shifted. Bonaparte was determined to divorce his wife. He returned home, locked himself in his room, and refused even to see her. "I will never forgive her," he said. Never.
Promising that she will never do it again, but just open the door.
By the time the sun rose, Bonaparte had weakened. The next morning found husband and wife in each other's arms. Josephine would never take a lover again, and while Bonaparte would always insist that he loved her best, he would do as he pleased with other women. While Bonaparte ruled France, Josephine gracefully assumed the role of First Lady. But she preferred the quiet seclusion of Malmaison to France's magnificent palaces. In deference to his wife, Bonaparte made Malmaison his countryside seat of government. He worked 7 days a week, often 18 hours a day, month after month. But if it could be said that he ever relaxed, it was at Malmaison with Josephine. While Napoleon spent long months on campaign far from France, Josephine passed the time at Malmaison. She was uncomfortable living in the palaces of the great royal families. "I was never made for so much grandeur," she said. "I can feel the Queen's ghost asking what am I doing in her bed." Malmaison was Josephine's refuge. There she tended to her gardens, importing exotic plants, trees, and flowers from all over the world. Although Napoleon was no longer the inexperienced youth, intoxicated by her erotic charms, he remained deeply attached to her. He considers me, Josephine told a friend, one of the rays of his star.
Napoleon
found in Josephine a woman who met all of his desires. She was an admirable empress. She complimented him. As Napoleon said, I win the wars and she wins people's hearts.
Josephine appeared more in love now than ever before, though she and her husband often quarreled. He objected to her spending nearly 1 million francs a year on clothes alone. She was jealous of his mistresses. But he made love much the same way he ate his meals, quickly. My mistresses, he said, do not in the least engage my feelings. Power is my mistress. He could not understand why Josephine was upset. She takes things far too seriously, he said. She is always afraid that I shall fall deeply in love. Can she not understand that love is not for me?
They were just passing relationships, and Josephine made more out of them than she should have. In the end, over time, they created a real partnership. They had risen to the heights together. If Josephine had given him a son, he would have been the happiest man in the world.
As his empire grew, Napoleon increasingly assumed the part of a Roman Caesar, godlike and infallible. Now he wanted a son to succeed him. But Josephine had never been able to give him one. 46 years old, she knew she never would. I know I will be shamefully dismissed from the bed of the man who crowned me, she told a friend. For months, Napoleon hesitated.
They were a couple very well suited to each other. Up to the end, he believed that Josephine was his lucky star. That's why it was so difficult to divorce her.
At last, he decided to tell Josephine they must sacrifice their marriage for the greater glory of France. 2 weeks later, the divorce became official. I understood my Bonaparte, Josephine said. I knew very well that in the end he would get his way. Josephine went at once to Malmaison. The next day, Napoleon came to see her in the driving rain. Hand in hand, they walked through the downpour. Then he was gone.
Pour elle, c'est fini. For her, it's over. Elle ne sera plus l'impératrice. She will no longer be Empress Josephine.
Mais Napoléon n'a pas non plus.
But Napoleon doesn't want this break either.
Il tient à Joséphine, il l'aime.
He's attached to Josephine. He loves her.
Et donc
and it's difficult for him too.
Napoleon gave Josephine Malmaison and an allowance of 3 million francs a year. Now he was free to find a new wife and father an heir to his throne. I want, he said, to marry a womb. He cast his eye on the Archduchess Marie-Louise, the 19-year-old daughter of his old enemy, the Emperor Francis I of Austria. Marriage to Marie-Louise would ally him with the Habsburgs, one of the great reigning families of Europe. But the young woman despised Napoleon. Just to see the man, she wrote in her diary, would be the worst form of torture. Her father overruled her objections. Marriage with Napoleon, he told her, would bring Austria peace and an alliance with the most powerful country in Europe. Brought up to obey, the 19-year-old girl said goodbye to her family and headed toward France. On April 2nd, 1810, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte married the Archduchess Marie-Louise, with all the extravagant display befitting the joining of two empires. He loves me very much, Marie-Louise wrote her father, and I respond to his love sincerely. There is something very fetching and very eager about him that is impossible to resist.
Napoleon must have wondered if he was dreaming. He was marrying a Habsburg. He was becoming allied with one of the oldest and most venerable monarchies in Europe.
Just 1 year after their marriage, the thunder of cannon brought all of Paris to attention. Marie-Louise had given birth to a baby boy. Napoleon called him the King of Rome. With a son and a devoted wife, Napoleon seemed transformed. He became a doting father and a loving husband. 42, his stomach swelling into a paunch, Napoleon was growing soft. Late hours, hardship, war are not for me at my age, he told an aide. I love my bed, my repose, more than anything. But I must finish my work. By the beginning of 1814, Napoleon was again in Paris when he learned that the Allies had invaded France itself. Fearing the worst, he began burning his private papers. Even Austria, led by Marie-Louise's father, Francis I, had come in for the kill. Don't worry, Napoleon told his wife and son. We shall beat Papa Francis. Trust me. On the morning of January 25th, they said goodbye. He would never see his wife or his son again. When he learned that Josephine had died at Malmaison, he did not leave his room for 2 days. Napoleon lasted 5.5 years on St. Helena. On May 5th, 1821, he died, deliriously whispering, France, Army, Chief of Army, Josephine. He was 51 years old.